Hi, all. Kinsey Schofield here, and I am with Ted Rowlands of Court TV. Ted, strangely, this is going to air on Thanksgiving Day. So I guess we'll start by saying Happy Thanksgiving, even though the content is a little dark. But I do think a lot of people on Thanksgiving Day are going to stumble upon this new JonBenét documentary that is on Netflix that's really all over the place. Um, I remember this story. I think everyone was addicted to it when it was happening, right? I mean, I was in the South, I was in Texas, and it was every single day. How did you consume the story? How old were you? Where were you?
I was working, well, the story uh, for, began at one point, but it's still going on, right?
Yeah.
So, when it first broke, I was definitely aware of it because of the mystery of what happened to this little girl and this was really what first, I think, introduction into child pageants for most of America.
Hmm.
And you had the tabloids were all over it. And there was this weird, like, wait a minute, they dressed her up like older lady and paraded her around. What's going on? And then the family was such a focus. Over the years, I covered the story. I used to fill in for Larry King often, and I was in LA, and it broke that John Carr was arrested. So I flew out to Boulder and hosted Larry for a few days from outside of the Ramsey home. And through the years, I have been consumed with it at times, like everybody else that follows true crime, and always thought, are we ever going to get an answer? And the older you get, I don't think it's ever going to get solved. But this new docket, you never know.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have stopped looking to find the answers. And your gut is the family, but there's so many other cases. I always come back. Elizabeth Smart, she was snatched right out of the house. Whole family's there. It can happen.
That surprises me that you say your gut is the family. I guess after watching this documentary, well, I've loved her father for some time now. For some reason, I have really I've watched
Oh
interviews.
yeah, I totally love it. I think I have evolved past that. But
Okay, good.
initially,
Yeah.
it was the initial, well, the body was in the house.
Right.
Why would someone just come in there and kill this little
The
girl and then
body
leave
was in the
her?
house. It
No.
was weird that the cops didn't find the body. The father found the body, although that was on the cops for not looking in that one room in the basement. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. But also in this documentary, they show us how, and actually, I don't know if they give us proof, but they definitely show us that according to them, the Boulder Police Department were utilizing the tabloids to try to put pressure on the family to admit something. So they would say things that weren't true in a way to elicit some sort of response from the family. But one thing I did, and I'd like your opinion on this. One thing I agree that did not reflect well on the family was their willingness to talk to the media and not the police, although the police were gunning for them. So I get that. I get that stress. But as a viewer, as somebody that's invested in the case from afar, does kind of look weird that you are willing to sit down with certain media outlets, but the Boulder Police Department is screaming, but they won't talk to us.
And I think that this is a problem for viewers and people from the outside. You're thinking, well, if I were in that situation, I would speak. They are a family with means, and a they have a direct line to an attorney. They hire an attorney, and every attorney who ever graduated law school would tell them, "Don't talk, don't say a word, don't give the police any ammunition because they are gunning for you." So they were following advice from an attorney. And that always comes across to the rest of us, like on the outside, they won't even cooperate with the
Yeah.
police. They must have done it. But you don't factor in that they're listening to their lawyer, and their lawyer is giving them obvious, luring 101 advice. Don't get trapped. And so it created, though, this really weird atmosphere where people had these theories, and they're all around, revolved around the family. Was it the mom? Did dad do it?
The
And the
son,
daughter,
can you believe that they were
oh,
accusing the little boy? Wait, can I
well,
I
that
um This
Yeah,
is
that was a big one because the boy, the son, let's say it was an accident, and then the family, mom and dad cover for him. That was that prevailing theory for this thing's gone all over the map for decades.
I just realized that my storytelling is off. Should we begin at what happened? In case anybody doesn't know. I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows this story, but I guess that if you haven't watched the documentary or you need a refresher, it's the most beautiful 6-year-old little girl in the world. Her father has some adult children. She actually has an older brother that is both her mom and dad's. That well, first of all, Beth passes away, I think, a year and a half after JonBenét is born. That's her father's daughter in a car accident.
Hmm.
And that is devastating to the family. So her father has lost 2 children in his lifetime. And I can't imagine that experiencing that. But he had children from a previous marriage, but then he has 3 children with Patsy. And JonBenét they said, despite the fact that she existed by the time that Beth passed away, they felt like JonBenét was God's gift to them to help them heal through the loss of Beth, which is like, it like actually rips your heart out of your body when you imagine that. And they just said JonBenét was just the snuggliest little girl, just a total lovey. And she looked like that too. She was a beautiful little girl. And something that I'd never heard before throughout this documentary was that the reason that they put her in pageants, and it was Patsy, was that Patsy had cancer. And this was kind of Patsy's way of, I don't know, fun after such a hard time going through chemo and dealing with cancer the first time and surviving that cancer. But that was one of the excuses they used. And Patsy was very much like, it's gross that you guys are sexualizing my daughter, but that's not what it was to us. That we were just having fun, playing dress up, learning
Right.
choreography, and it was just a good time to us. But they go to a Christmas party on Christmas night. Everything is fine. They come home. Everybody goes to bed. The next morning, Patsy's walking down their spiral staircase. There's a note. This is the weirdest part to me. This what do you call those notes where you're demanding money?
Ransom note.
A ransom note. Like why would you leave a ransom note if the baby's dead? I've never understood that. And I think that's another one of the reasons why they immediately connect the parents to it. I don't know. She stumbles upon this ransom note, screams. Husband comes rushing down. It specifically says, don't call the cops. They call the cops. They start calling friends. The house is full of people looking for the baby. The cops show up. The cops search the house, find nothing because the parents are like anxious and going crazy. I think a cop says, could you just do another sweep of the house just to get out of my face almost? And that is when John finds his baby girl in the basement, in a room in the basement. But before he finds her, he found a window open and a suitcase underneath the window, as if somebody utilized that. And he said that hadn't been there, as if somebody had utilized the suitcase to jump through the window. He said he broke that window trying to get into the house months or years ago because he'd locked himself out. Finds her. She's been strangled. We believe she was assaulted with the same tool that she was strangled with. It was a paintbrush. And we still have no idea who's done it, yet all of these weird people have tried to take credit for it.
Yeah, you summed it all up. And guess and to this day, her murder is still a mystery, and her mom has since passed
Mm.
from cancer, and dad is still fighting, to find out answers. As time has gone by, I do think that the public has generally figured out that the Ramseys didn't do it, and I don't know that the Boulder Police Department has figured that out yet. I think that they are still, at least the ones that were initially involved, believe that the Ramseys were somehow, but they can't figure it out. They can't come up with exactly what happened, and that's where we're at.
Do you remember that the one the one theory, I shouldn't say conspiracy, but the one theory one of them came up with that made me the angriest, although the Burke hitting her, like the accidental murder or the hitting her over the pineapple snacks, that was the CBS one, which they sued for and won because it was so ludicrous. But one of the theories that angered me the most was the idea that her mom would be so mad at her for peeing the bed that she would lash out at her over peeing. I mean, to me, I hear that both of those theories, and I say, how desperate are you? Like that, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even remotely make sense.
Right. And it is, I think, human nature to try to button things up that we don't know what happened. And so you start letting your mind wander. And sadly, it got to the point where, insiders were letting their minds wander into, you take a little nugget from a neighbor. Well, I know Patsy used to always get mad at this, or, what, and now all of a sudden, maybe that's it. Maybe. And you're right. As time has gone on, those theories become more and more ridiculous and sad. And put yourself in that family's position, going through the pain of losing JonBenét and then having the world and the people that you used to know now at arm's length, and your face is on every tabloid at the supermarket. People are staring at you like you've killed your own child. I mean, these are people that were very established in their neighborhood and their world and their professions, and it's shocking to think that that family endured what they did, and Patsy did till she died.
Yeah. Well, it reminded, I don't know if you've seen, you don't strike me as the target demographic here, but it reminds me a little bit of the Free Britney documentaries where they demonstrate how they demonstrate it. The manipulative is kind of the right word, but it's not necessarily the right word. But they demonstrate how cruel and how much the press crossed the line when it came to Britney Spears, and how we really should have been more empathetic to her. And we should have seen that there were mental health issues. So we shouldn't have been chasing her around in cars and on motorcycles trying to grab the photo of her. In this particular case, in this documentary, it's called Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey on Netflix. They show a Geraldo Rivera episode where they have these random people that are jurors that decide that John and Patsy are guilty of murder. And you just think, how the heck did that happen? How did we allow something like that on television? Does that not just blow your mind that there was an entire episode of Geraldo Rivera? And they showed this very innocent scene where JonBenét is playing a saxophone. And one of the ladies on Geraldo accuses her of, something sexual. And it's like, that's a baby playing a saxophone for her, skill at a
Oh, right.
pageant.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how did this happen, Ted? Ted does, that's a pretty
you
tough question.
know,
Sorry, but you
I
know what I'm
how did
saying.
it happen? It's the insatiable need for more from the public. Anything that was published on JonBenét was consumed in an instant. And what happens when you're on the other side of it? Let's say you're producing Geraldo's, next hour on, next Wednesday's show. You get some person who comes up with this idea, and because there's this overwhelming need to do more JonBenét because the ratings are through the roof, things like that all of a sudden now are greenlit. And I'll bet after the show they had an uh-oh feeling like, oh, it's kind of a little much. But
Yeah.
that happens with these cases that take off where the public can't get enough of. And that covering the Royals. I mean, you come up, you publish anything you can to keep feeding the beast because people want more. And it can be very dangerous and very sad, especially in a case like this.
Yeah. That is one of the, Geraldo Rivera, I thought he lost me when he took the shirtless selfie. Remember that one? I thought he lost
I,
me with the shirtless
I
selfie.
do remember that, but do you remember when he went live on
The vault.
uh, yeah, Al Capone's vault?
Yes. Oh,
It
Geraldo.
got me. I was watching, waiting for him to start pulling millions out. There's nothing. Like
Not
this,
a dang thing.
but it was beautifully built up, like
Oh
it's
yeah.
made for TV moment. You had to watch it. He's a talented. I got to know him a little bit over the years. Him and his brother during the Scott Peterson case, because he was into that. He would come out to California, and he's a good guy. He's just very intense, and he had figured out the formula in terms of what buttons to push to get eyeballs, and he was good at it.
Do you think that regarding his career, because I agree with you that he figured out the formula, do you feel like there was did he just change? Did he evolve? Did he mature? Or was there and this is obviously just us guesstimating, do you feel like there was a desire in him to be taken more seriously, and that's why he stopped doing those things? Because he has stopped doing those things and he does want to be taken seriously. He's
Oh, yeah. I think look at Howard Stern.
Oh yes,
He
that's a
had,
great example.
it's the maturity of the human being, and I would say both Howard Stern and Geraldo are fantastically gifted broadcasters, and they're very intelligent people, and they evolved to their credit. Uh, Someone who's not intelligent doesn't evolve at all, and that's a problem.
That's true. That's very true. The one of the people that you and I have in common that I love dearly that I haven't spoken to in years, I probably should. That's actually not a great reflection on me, but I cornered her. We had lunch together one-on-one one time. Beth Karas, like the first time, Beth Karas is just a encyclopedia of true crime, and she's seen it all. She's done it all, very similar to you. And so, like, the second I was alone with her, the first question I said was, "Who killed JonBenét?" And she said, "I don't know." And I was shocked that she said, "I don't know," because she knows everything. I mean, truly, she knows
Right.
absolutely everything.
Yeah, and if she doesn't even have an opinion, then it's a real conundrum. Because yeah, she's wonderful. Has been
That's
doing
a,
it.
that is that's sad to me that you say though that in our lifetime you don't know if we'll know. But while I was watching that documentary, I messaged you afterwards because I was like, I'm sobbing over here over Patsy. I can't remember why I was crying over Patsy, but I was crying over Patsy. There was also, and remember, Patsy was incredibly villainized throughout that process. They swore to God it was her handwriting, which, absolutely ludicrous. But
Her
she,
handwriting, but again, she was villainized for the pageants. People that didn't understand it, didn't know that she even had can't. They were like, "How dare that mother put this young girl in jeopardy?" Because they
Mhm.
dressed her up like a woman,
Yeah.
streetwalker, and look what happened. And that was a very that was part of the equation at that point for this family. And just again, can't imagine what they went through and what she went through.
Right. And now look at toddlers and tiaras and Honey Boo Boo. Like, now we glorify those people and give them, give
Do
them.
we? I think we're still pretty judgmental.
That's true. That's true. But I do envy Honey Boo Boo's mom's total body makeover for a reality show. I'll take that TLC if you're watching. I'd love it. But Patsy talked about I think that she might have had cancer for the second time, but and the second time I believe is when she passed away. But she was talking about how her mom had passed away and JonBenét had passed away, and how she wasn't scared of dying anymore because it felt like the party was on the other side. Like she couldn't wait to get to heaven to be with her mom and her daughter. I'm pretty sure. I'm crying now. Like I'm getting teary eyed now. So I'm pretty sure that's when I was starting to get upset while I was watching the documentary. But she always was so kind, and I really grew to appreciate her more throughout this documentary. And I've always loved the dad. Maybe it's just because I've heard more from him, but I really ached for her mother throughout this process, or throughout the process of watching this documentary. I thought that whoever put it together really cared about this family. And I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, I mean they got the cooperation from the family, and also they went in. I think with that is you know the mindset, and good on them. I like that. I like the inside look at this family because it was such a tragedy that lasted for decades. And I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to it, especially now after hearing you were brought to tears.
You've got, yeah, I really did. I thought it was well
I'm going to
done.
be a mess. I
It's
watch a commercial on it. So
a
yeah,
dog. Yeah, if there's a dog on it, Ted Rowlands is done. A sweet dog commercial. That yeah, I don't know. I'm sad that we won't likely, like you said, no. Why do you know? Could you give me any insight onto why people take credit for crimes that they didn't commit? That particularly, it's the John Carr is the one that was in foreign
John
country.
Mark Carr, yeah, they brought him back from the Philippines, and he admitted to doing it, and then they, I'm sure they got he did none of the DNA matched, but I'm sure the more they interacted with him, the more they're like, oh God, he's crazy.
Yeah.
But they, um, that mentality is someone who's obsessed in love with this idea of, he said he was in love with JonBenét, but he had created a whole nother universe in his mind, centered around this case. Another dangerous part of a case like this, the Ramsey family was the victim of John Mark Carr's on much smaller levels of hatred or obsession, and that had to be a nightmare to navigate over the decades.
And when you were covering it, like you said, when you were filling in for Larry King and you were doing this, did you feel like the way I'm talking about how at one point there were no guidelines when it came to covering the family, almost in a way that I would say is unethical. By the time you were covering it, do you feel like there were some guidelines,
Yes,
ethics were
because
coming out?
Dad had filed a couple lawsuits, and believe me,
They'll do it.
CNN, everywhere else, if you worked for a national network, you did not mess with that family after they were successful with the lawsuits. And it, to their credit, really did help. Now, minor publications, social media, that's the wild, wild west, but major networks and any media company was on full alert after they became litigious and watched
And
everything.
we should mention that he filed that lawsuit because one of the detectives wrote a book accusing them. I think this is the lawsuit you're referring to. One of the detectives, the one that had the pee the bed theory, wrote a book accusing them of the murder of JonBenét, and he just said, "This is my theory." But they sued the detective, they sued the publishing company, and they settled and or won. I mean, I think when you settle, you're there's
You win.
some
Yeah.
yeah.
And they sent the message, and it was heard loud and clear. But when John Mark Carr was arrested, I thought, oh my gosh, they solved it. He did it. Wow, crazy. You just wanted to know more. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? When it came out that they released him, it was like, oh, wow, back to square one.
It's devastating. But I did agree with JonBenét's dad, who said the fact that a detective wrote a book, a detective that worked on the case wrote a book about an open case is crazy unethical. Like who thought
Oh,
that is somebody with no moral compass whatsoever chasing a
and a
doll.
weird anger with the prosecution because they wouldn't file charges. We had enough to go with. That that is immaturity at its highest level, and just
Arrogance. Yeah,
zero wisdom.
ego.
Yeah, I know it all kind of thing.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that you will like this docu-series. I felt like it was, I mean, I still feel defeated at the end of the day, not knowing who did it, but I felt better about the family and such sympathy for the family. And I do think that it's important that between that Britney, the series of Britney documentaries and documentaries like this, we look back at some of the things we did and we decide we're going to be better and we're never going to behave like that again because um, I can't believe some of the things that we put this poor family through. I mean, Patsy would talk about going to having her son Burke there at the grocery store and there be a National Enquirer that said the mother did it and her having to look at her little boy and saying, just ignore that. I mean, can you imagine that? I cannot comprehend. And to your point, talking about how they can control the mainstream media, but not social media, the reason Burke wouldn't participate in this docu-series is because Reddit to this day still says horrible things about him online, and he just is between that and CBS, the CBS show that accused him. He sued, he won. He
And
just said it's too much.
and if he, I guarantee you, him not participating has launched already. Oh, I knew it. Look, he did it. That this is perpetuating this horrible.
Yeah. Never complain, never explain. Follow the royals. Follow the royals is my guide. Uh, Ted Rowlands, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for spending your pre-turkey day with me.
Love it. Bye, kids.
Bye.